Thank you. Nous arrivons à la fin pratiquement de notre troisième édition du New York Forum Africa. Avant d'écouter le discours de clôture de son Excellence Président de la République, je vais appeler, juste pour ouvrir une session assez brève, une quinzaine de minutes de questions et réponses avec la salle. Je vais donc appeler à mes côtés AKON, if you want please to join us. Je vais demander à Youssou de nous rejoindre et au président QUIROGA et au président TOLEDO qui ont suivi pendant ces 3 jours ce New York Forum Africa de nous rejoindre sur scène. On peut les applaudir, ils ont été extrêmement studieux, extrêmement inspirants. Préparez quelques questions. And President Toledo, I have just one question to each of you before we open a question with the floor. President QUIROGA, what these 3 days, I would say, brought you, or how will you leave Gabon tonight after these 3 days? In which spirit?
Thank you, Richard. Very positive spirit. I would tell you that it was very enlightening and heartwarming to see all of you participating in this wonderful event. I think I would leave you with 4 quick ideas. Number 1 is find the niche for Africa. Number 2, the brand. Number 3, educate the young. And number 4, include the women. First, the niche. We have 2 great sporting icons that we had, Mutombo and Kasparov. You got to find your niche. I'm not very afraid of them. I would challenge each of them to play sports. I want to play chess with Mutombo, and I want to play basketball with Kasparov. So then it'd be... And I think Africa has a unique opportunity. China is buying commodities at sky-high prices. That's very positive. But this is probably the last great boom of industrialization that drives up the price of our commodities in South America and Africa. Because unless there's 4 billion people in Mars that want to buy commodities one day, this is it. We have to find out, South America and Africa, how to move up the value chain from raw materials to industrialized goods, and how to deal with China in a way where they're not just buyers, where they're not just lenders, but also full-blown investors and partners. And I think finding that niche with the unique opportunity that Africa has of access to Europe and American markets at preferential terms provides unique leverage that no one else has. For a long time, the world has chased cheap manufacturing labor costs in China. It will now start chasing cheap energy costs in North America and Mexico. So if I'm in Africa and I have the commodities and I have preferential access to the US and EU market, that is the niche I would try to find for Africa. The brand, certainly there's a lot of things that were said here. I realize that there's a problem. Seems like everything that happens in Africa that is good is national and what's bad is regional. And I don't know how you change that. The Kenyan remittance system, the M-Pesa, is a Kenyan miracle. The reconciliation in Rwanda is a Rwanda miracle. Mandela is a South African icon. But yet, Ebola, the violence, the kidnapping of the girls seems to be like it's an African regional issue. I think how you change those around and rebrand the continent that is full of opportunity is important. And the last 2 on the youth and women. Real Madrid won the championship. I'm sure all the Real president is I'm sure happy. His team, he was rooting for Real Madrid. But let me tell you in soccer terms, demographic dividends, what Mutombo mentioned, are very important. In South America and Africa, we have a lot of young people. That makes it difficult to compete nowadays. Imagine if you had a soccer team, even Real Madrid, and the average age of the players was 12, and the opposite team average age was 27. There's no way you can quite compete now. But imagine a few years down the road, the result of that game, as Europe, the US, Japan age, and as our young people get older, if you train them, if you educate them, if you provide 200 days of public schooling, bilingual education, good quality education. And in today's world, there's no excuse for ignorance because you do not have to physically go to the place where knowledge is located. It comes to you if you make it available through a massive broadband connections. And the last point that I was enlightened to see is women. No team in the world would prevail in soccer or in basketball if you left half of your players on the bench. With 6 players on the field, you do not beat a team that has 11. And for a long time, in our parts of the world, we have left women outside. If you had 2 sets of workers, and one set of worker drunk less, was more honest, worked harder, would you leave them off the working field? And the reality is we have done that with women for a long time. They're more honest, they're more hardworking, they're the best nurses, the best doctors, the best teachers, the best economists, and we have neglected them for a long, long time. How do you incorporate them into a productive 21st century is key. And I'll close with this. Richard Mutombo cited Mandela. He has several great phrases for the quote books. He said, everything seems impossible until it gets done. To have Africa progress and be an active player in the 21st century, globalized century, to educate the youth, to incorporate the women, seems impossible. But it can be done, and this event is a testament to it.
Thank you, President QUIROGA. Thank you very much. President Toledo, can I ask you short remarks before we open the floor to the questions after these 3 days?
First of all, once again, President Bongo and the First Lady, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for letting us come to this promising continent. You have been extremely great, and Richard, you have done an incredible job in organizing this. Not only the logistics part of it, is the content of it. I want to leave tonight with 4 concepts that you have taught me. My friend Butongo, to be big, you don't have to be tall. But when you are big and tall, you are a giant human being. Latin America, like Africa, is full of youth. And youth is our challenge. Of course, before you become a young, you have to resolve the problem of malnutrition, because the interrelationship between malnutrition, healthcare, and education could truncate the dream of a continent. I'm not big, neither am I tall, but I survived. I was early malnutrition because I'm one of 16 brothers and sisters from the same mother and the same father. And I made it to Stanford, to Harvard, to other universities, thanks to a statistical error. The world today does not deserve statistical errors. The world deserves equal opportunity for all of them, men and women. Let us not frustrate the hope of the youth. Decent jobs, well paid, have a dream. The youth the women. Let's make a decision to empower them. I said at the beginning of this conference, without them, our crisis will be deeper, because thanks to them, they are great administrators of scarcity. Finally, yes, Africa and Latin America needs investment to grow. Don't just sell raw materials. Let's get into another sector's good aggregate value that generates jobs, that generates food, that we can create and not only depend on selling oil, gas, because that's finite and also contaminates. Watch it. With climate change, it is happening in the world. Mr. President, I thought last night that I would use this time because I am charged with the hope that the youth in Africa and in the world, that the youth will have a decent job, that women will be empowered, and in doing so, we will not destroy the land that God has given us. I'm going to give you my tie as a sign of hope.
Thank you, President Toledo. How can I open the floor after that? I'm speechless. And I have to tell you, this was not at all prepared, at all. Wow. So, if someone wants to start with a question, we have a lady on the right. Please, because of the time, a question starting by a word and ending by a question mark, please.
Bonsoir, distingués.
Good evening, eminent guests and your excellencies, Mr. President. My name is Mariana Brizian. I'm a student in history and sciences and also a member of the Association of Women's Support. And I'm quite happy to see here that all the members of the panel are here, including His Excellency Mr. QUIROGA and Mr. Toledo, so much wanted to put the emphasis on the strategic role that women can play in the development of their countries. And I must say, can you please come to your question? Yes, I just wanted to know what you felt. What was the expertise in the case of Gabon in particular, the women's role or contribution could be? Because in a way, women are natural redistributors of wealth, and that's what one of the panelists said, and it struck me as being quite relevant. But out of your experience, what sort of suggestion would you make in order to make women real economic stakeholders in the development of our country?
Women could really have an active role. You were repeating during these past 3 days that we need to empower women. How? To be concrete.
If you have $1 to invest in the middle of extreme poverty or poverty, invested in women because the rate of return to that investment, it's $1.50 more than if you invested in men. I have nothing against men. They will invest in the education and the food of the kids. Let's now reverse the biased tendency that before we gave preferences to a man to go to school. Equal opportunity. I'm not discriminating. I'm not saying now is the turn of woman versus the man. Equal opportunity to education. Let me tell you something, Richard. I'm over here because I'm free. And I'm free thanks to education. I can choose where to go. I can be any part of the world, but I'm free. I'm free to choose, and thanks to education, let women give them the freedom to choose.
Je vais prendre 2-3 questions rapidement et puis ensuite on... Oui.
Okay, I'll take just a couple of questions quickly. Number 2, perhaps, in front of me, if you could stand up and be brief, concise. Me. Thank you. Good evening to all of you. Rather than asking a question, no, sorry to be directive, but just a question. Please, Mr. Attias, a lot of questions are being asked, and we have a lot of expectations. I just want to stop to say thank you. Thank you for the NYFA's organization, and thank you to our president also, because I am, in fact, here the fruit of a cooperation. Oh, microphone's being cut. Oh, there we go. I am supporting partnerships because thanks to this Franco-Gabonese cooperation, I was able to be awarded 6 various degrees from the best possible universities, French ones among others. So I would like to express my gratitude also to Mr. Fabius in front of this eminent assembly, to express my gratitude in particular to our president for everything he does for the diaspora as well as the youth. Please, a round of ovation and applause for him. Question number 4, please, then.
Please.
Alors, je pense que ma question s'adresse.
I think my question is probably dedicated to all of you. In fact, of course, I'd like to start by congratulating you for the courage of everything you said, but the strong symbolical gesture of Mr. Toledo with his green tie, of course, that represents both nature, agriculture, and agriculture and the farming industry and sectors, after all, are at the beginning and the very end of everything, because before playing basketball or chess games, you've got to be able to make sure you can feed your people and eat something. Before singing or before studying, you also need to make sure you're fed correctly. So what I wish is that all of these personalities turn into proper ambassadors of our brave African farmers whose conditions need to be improved considerably. And we need to talk a lot more about it. Thank you very much. I see here everyone has come to make their own political statement. I will have to end up asking my own questions. It's your last chance to ask a real question, please, from the floor. Otherwise, we'll carry on with our discourses. Thank you.
I want to ask to Ms. Mutombo if sport could be an industry like in Europe or America. Thank you very much.
Can you repeat, please, because on n'a pas très bien entendu, pardon, sur scène.
I want to ask to Ms. Mutombo if sport could be an industry in Africa like in Europe or America.
Merci beaucoup pour votre question. Premièrement, je voulais vous dire que sport n'est pas.
Thank you very much for your question. I don't consider sports to be an industry as such. In fact, it's an activity meant really at improving your well-being, and you've got to practice, you know, to be mensana and corpore sano, but in order to generate money or returns on investment. In fact, this is not this can't be generalized or said about any sports discipline or activity, in fact. So you have to be a little more specific. Are you talking about basketball, handball, or football? Are you talking about catch or which sports exactly you're referring to. If you're talking about basketball, what can be said is that there are a lot of investors who have injected money in this game, and that's the reason why the NBA, of course, is generating so many $1 billion. But apart from that, it's not a common factor to all sports activities. Thank you, Dikembe. So we're reaching towards the end of this discussion. But I'd like to ask AKON and Youssou to give us some synthetic or concluding remarks, basically, to try and wrap up and tell the audience.
Sites and online. What message do you want to carry? You are a great leader representing the diaspora in America. You are an icon. And what message? Because you know the voice is very strong, as Ms. Obama said. So please, which message do you want to deliver to us?
Thank you very much. Mr. President, thank you very much for inviting us. This is a huge honor to be sitting on this panel to represent the youth. Ultimately, we can sit here all night and discuss what Africa needs. It's relevant, it's clear, it's visual. And we can also sit here and say, well, we need to involve women a lot more. Honestly, this conversation is so well overdue, because nothing in this world has happened without the assistance of our women, or even the beginning of the creation, because it starts all with our women. So ultimately, when you bring it all the way down, it revolves right back to 360. It all starts with us. It starts with you. One person, one man, one woman, one child. You have to want it more for yourself than the person next to you. You have to believe and want it first, because if we all want the same exact thing, there's no reason why it can't happen. It's simple. You have to want it. We can talk about it, we can discuss it, but at the end of the day, if you don't want it, the discussion will never even happen. So ultimately, as you sit around and we look around the world and we see the conflicts here, the disagreements here, the faith differences here, if we just communicated, a lot of it honestly would be resolved. There's no issue, no problem in the world that can't be resolved with a simple conversation. But ultimately, our pride gets involved, you know, just ignorance gets involved, lack of education gets involved. And ultimately, when we look at it, we always have to think tomorrow. You know, I think the world's solutions is all about how we think about how it affects us in the future. So ultimately, if we come together, want it first for ourselves, then we go seek the knowledge on how it actually benefits us for tomorrow, then we can then begin to communicate and strategize as a people, as a unit, on how we should make that future happen for us to all our benefits. And that's more so all I have to say. Let's start with one man, one woman, one child. Start with you. Let's first create that agreement in our own minds that this is what we want to do for ourselves. And then that will in turn will reach to everyone else. It's almost like a saying when you drive on an airplane and they have the assistant, she comes and gives you all these rules. And she says, well, in case of an emergency, apply the mask on yourself first and then apply it to the person next to you.
Thank you. Le mot de la fin de ce panel va revenir à...
Thank you so much. I think the concluding remarks will probably come to our brother Youssou. Youssou, for example, if I wasn't able to attend the New York Forum of Africa and I come across you, what will you summarize in a few words? Thank you, Mr. Richard. I, of course, wanted to start by thanking Mr. the President of the Republic and his First Lady, and also to congratulate all the Africans and Africa's friends who over the last years have contributed so much to the amount of publicity made for Africa, basically. Warmest congratulations for this talk about Africa. Congratulations to you, Mr. Attias. Of course, I was listening to you earlier on, and when you have laudable initiatives such as yours that can give a platform to so many voices, bringing so much progress and development, you may encounter a run against criticism, but I'm sure that those who criticize you today will probably bow their hats to you tomorrow. So a lot of noble projects were born in perhaps difficult labor, but will end up being applauded. And I would like to finish by saying that we don't say often enough how ungrateful your function and your role is, Mr. President. And my deepest congratulations for your initiatives, basically. You're never congratulated and applauded enough because you count among the leaders who have decided to surf with the wave of development and progress, although and albeit you are holding an ungrateful position. Thank you very much. I think we can applaud very strongly Mr. QUIROGA, Mr. TOLEDO, and all the eminent participants of the panel who can now go back to their seats. Don't get a few seconds now. We'll be watching the traditional best-of of the New York Forum Africa 2014, which gathered 6 heads of state. This New York Economic Forum, which gathered 1,600 participants from 58 countries. And more than 100 interviews were given to 150 different journalists. People are sometimes happy with statistics, so we're going to feed them with them. 110,000 new visitors in 48 hours on the website. That represents more or less 250,000 visitors since the beginning of the creation of the New York Economic Forum Africa. And I'm talking about individual visitors, not institutional ones. 5 major contracts were signed on this very stage to represent more than $1 billion euros worth of investments, and several thousands of employments were created. 1,000 participants, 1,000 among you, have gathered and organized meetings in the marketplace, which was the tent next door. And only today, 500 these bilateral meetings took place. And be aware, said in passing, that this business platform, will stay online and live on the New York Economic Forum for at least the next 2 coming months in order to facilitate your conversations and ongoing dialogues. And then, so you heard this morning, we'd organized a session which was a bit of a premiere, really, with young inventors, young African inventors who came to present us with their inventions in front of potential investors. And I must tell you today that one of these investors has already managed to confirm his commitment into one of these great projects. He will fully endorse the financial sum that was asked for, and he will also support, it's the AKON funds, in fact, that have committed to these investments. And then also, with my friend Mr. Youssou, we've also decided to support a new project. Both of our groups will launch a new investment fund dedicated to Africa in the field of media and entertainment, the purpose of which will be to capitalize $500 million. We've already started to raise these funds, and the teams are composed, and we're beginning to invest in the media in Africa with all sorts of new jobs and supporting subsidies for startup media companies already available by the end of the year. So thanks to all the participants, and also that's part of the magic, in fact, of the New York Economic Forum. A lot of surprises came on the initiative of the President, Ali Bongo Adamba. Mr. Kagame and Fabius could actually meet in the context of this forum, and that's part of the collateral positive effects of this forum, basically. Now we'll have a quick look at the best-of video clip of this forum.